All right, take number 2, the plastic sleeve that goes around the crankshaft in order to protect the seal and stretch the seal. I did not have that on there correctly. So as soon as I went to tap the seal on or to push the cover all the way in, I ended up tearing the seal. So it just had a rip in and I pulled it off. So yep, no bueno. So I went to the store, bought a new seal, and we will try take 2. All right, pulled the cover back off, cleaned it up, took the old seal out. As you can see now, there's not a seal in here. So we're gonna do method number 2, where put the seal on while the retainer's in place. A little bit more difficult as far as just getting it aligned, but a lot easier to manipulate that plastic installation sleeve so I don't tear the new seal against the crankshaft as I'm going over this lip here. So got the bolts in just finger tight, so I'm just going to kind of gently snug them up, and then we will work through the torque pattern on these. These bolts are 89 inch-pounds. You go in a star pattern, there is no pre-torque, it's just straight to 89 inch-pounds. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then we'll come down here to these, and I'll have to verify it, but I believe they're 15 foot-pounds. So once we get everything torqued down, then we'll work on the seal. Nice. So everything is torqued. Now to get the seal. So plastic sleeve is in place. There is a larger side for the sleeve. Obviously that larger slide is meant to slide over the crankshaft. Still not the easiest of fits, but it does go once you get it exactly right. So over the crank, right? Now the idea is that you can push this seal and it'll expand it just enough to get over the crank. And that, my friends, is a beautiful rear main seal.
Didn't really talk through much of, you might have seen a clip that we did get the rear main seal in after me absolutely botching it and tearing it the first time, and then another one just faulting on us. This one is in. We're actually satisfied with it, but it was not easy, and we ended up putting the plate on, as you might have seen, first instead of trying to do all of it at once, which made it much easier, just so you didn't have RTV all over your hands, is what happened, which is why we couldn't get much camera footage the first time, because both of our hands were covered in RTV. But now that it's in, we can move on to the pilot bearing. I think it's safe to say we learned our lesson, and that is buy the correct tool. Don't buy Chinese knockoffs. So we bought this puller, and I think it was like $18. Well, lo and behold, it doesn't fit all 3 prongs into the pilot bearing. So right now we've got 2, and we're sure it'll do something. Is it what we want? We are unsure at this point. We're gonna try to pull it with 2, and if it goes well, it'll pop right out for us. So we're gonna go ahead and give it a try. All right, so there's a few things: hard work, dedication, an air compressor, and a grinder can't accomplish. Maybe some WD-40 when applied. We got it to fit all 3 of these rungs. Like I said, with a air compressor and a grinder, just grinding down the lips, just little by little, and now we've got all 3 prongs in. So the problem, I might be able to explain this a little bit better when we have the puller out of the car, is there's 3 pieces that go into the center of this pilot bearing. And we only had 2, which means it was rotating because the other 2 were allowed to move within this space. So we needed that 3rd one in there to get a clean straight pull back with the puller instead of it twisting and cranking like it was. So we're gonna give it a second try.
I just ended up tearing up the inner race there. Great.
Ah.
Okay. That is frustrating. All right, since the puller did not work, what I'm gonna do is just take a bunch of small pieces of rag, right? Any kind of grease or anything that will, you know, create some type of hydraulic pressure, and we're just going to fill this cavity. So not rocket science, but all we're doing is filling it with something that when compressed will ooze the direction we want it to ooze. I saw somebody put bread in water and used moist bread in here because that would work. I have no idea why that wouldn't work. So just whatever you have available. I have an old tub of petroleum jelly here called Aerodis. I don't know, something that we used on an airplane once, I reckon. And I'm just gonna pack some grease in here, because all I'm gonna do is push on it, create some hydraulic pressure, and push that bearing out using force and hydraulic pressure.
So the extension we were using has now gotten caught. The large end has been caught behind the bearing, and it's the perfect size. So it doesn't come back out. So we had to hit it with a hammer to get it in. It out, just stuck in there. And now there's a gap between where the bearing's coming out. So there's not enough hydraulic pressure to push it in more. Hey, back with the new pilot bearing, and I'll let Dad explain because he knows more about putting these in than I do.
This is going to be simpler than taking it apart, I guarantee you. So, pilot bearing has a slight lip on one side, and it's got these recesses here so grease can flow, but that's unimportant. So it just gets put in. Do your best to put it in nice and even so it doesn't get cocked to one side. It'll make your life a whole lot easier. If you have a seal and bearing install tool, the nut on the back side of the tool actually works out great because it fits in that in the recess perfectly, so therefore it makes a nice even fit. Use a dead blow hammer, makes life a whole lot easier when you're doing these things. So, and then just try your best to keep your seal or your installation tool married up to it, and you should go in without too much fanfare. And you're just going to go until you are seated completely around, and you'll hear the difference once you're seated. So that is the extent of sealing. And then just take a good look inside at the needles, the grease in the needles. Just make sure that when you put your tool inside or whatever, that you didn't knock any of the needle bearings out. You shouldn't, they're seated in there well, but just make sure that you have a full set of needle bearings when you're done. But that is it. So installation took all of 22 seconds versus the removal. So Josh learned the hard way how to remove the bearing.
It was actually 1 minute and 52 seconds.
No, that was talking. That was talking, son.
All right, so this is post pilot bearing installation, and now we get to move forward with the next steps to getting the transmission put in, which would be ta-da, flywheel clutch. This is actually not a new flywheel, so we had this machined down just to get this surface back to where we're satisfied with it. It really wasn't bad, a few nicks and scratches, but that's to be expected really. Other than that, it's actually in really good shape. So we just decided to machine and reuse, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the actual clutch when we're putting it in. Right now we're just going to focus on getting the flywheel put into place, and then we'll move on to that, and I'll talk a little bit more about the clutch and things, rated to, and all those statistics later on when we're actually working on it. So let's get back under the car. First things first, we're very organized today. So it's gonna be, there's two little dowels that this fits over. Very easy to knock off still. Another thing you're gonna have to watch out for is this wire bracket.
Gets in the way.
Gets in the way all the time. You just gotta kind of shove it up.
We'll just call it the bastard bracket.
Yeah, it holds wires and it's obnoxious. But besides that, we're just gonna mount it up and But as you can see, probably tell, you can't get that metal plate on, that heat sink on after the flywheel. Self-explanatory once you get it up. We're two-man team, so we're trying to get the bolt and the camera and the flywheel here.
Yeah, and I went ahead and bought new flywheel bolts while I was at it. I figured we're in here. They're $18 off of American Muscle. Well worth it. One of the things that you do have to do for a flywheel is put Loctite on. So we are going to use blue Loctite because it does not specify in the manual. It just says a Teflon thread locker because blue is what I found first. So blue it is. We're just going to put a little bit of thread locker on, put the bolts in, and then we are going to torque them to 62 foot-pounds. The specs call from 59 to 65, so kind of split the middle.
Okay, just because that was a giant pain and it's a quite heavy piece, I couldn't film much putting these bolts in. The main thing to look out for is these only line up in one direction. Make sure that your bolt holes are aligned before you start tightening them on. I made that mistake, and just make sure that all your bolt holes are aligned. There's gonna be 6, as Dad was just telling me. Some Fords do have 8, so the pack of flywheel bolts came with 8, but we only have 6. Don't worry if you have 2 extras. Like I said, some Fords do have 8. So we're just gonna have 2, and these are for puller holes, so those are actually not for bolts. So just line up these 6 and get them in there. It's quite a tassel with just one person, so just be warned because this is a heavy piece of metal. Now that we've got the flywheel all mounted up, I told you guys we were going to move right into the clutch, and that's exactly what we're going to do right away. This is the old one, and I wanted to show you guys real quick just to give some clarifications on which way to put it. This one's quite simple, so this one obviously has flywheel side written on it, but the new one I'm about to show you does not have it printed. So the easiest way to show you is you can see that the raised part of the hub is actually on the back, or the piece that would be facing the transmission. So this would be the flywheel side facing the car, and then the opposite side would be the one facing the transmission. And moving similarly to what is known as the Ram power grip, it is a organic and metallic. They call it a dual friction. It's rated for around 550. Right now we're not pushing 550, so this will be more than enough, and be more than enough to give us some upgrade room. And as you can see, as I was just explaining, this one doesn't have any print anywhere saying what side goes where, but using that simple trick, you know that hub, you know that this is going to be your flywheel side right here. It's flat side, so we can move straight into doing it. A little bit more, you've got an organic side, so this is your flywheel side, and it's got the organic, and then it's a metallic side for facing the transmission. You'd have to get a transmission expert to give you all the benefits of that, but I know that it's quite a bit lighter, and we'll be able to handle the horsepower we want to push through the car much better. So let's go ahead and get this thing in. One thing I didn't mention we were going to do real quick is we're going to just brake clean all the surfaces that meet, just to make sure. As you saw in that last clip, we had our greasy hands all over the flywheel mating surface, so we definitely want to make sure that is cleaned up. A little bit of grease is not going to hurt anything. It's going to burn off pretty quick, but we had a bunch of hands, we had a bunch of grease going on it, so we want to make sure that both these surfaces, just hit them with brake cleaner, are good and cleaned. Just a small little maintenance item, but make sure to do it. All right, we are under the car with all the necessary pieces we need for right now. So first step is going to be, we're going to put the clutch up, then we're going to use a handy dandy alignment tool. So we're going to put the clutch up, put it in, so that this will hold it up for us, and then we'll get everything else lined up and bolted in. This way it'll hold it up so you don't have to, I'm pretty sure these are pretty standard with clutches and from most places now.
Fed in there for sure.
This will just hold it up for you and then allow you to get the pressure plate up much easier. Like I said, they come pretty standard with most clutches nowadays, so you to utilize it to its full potential.
Just makes that much easier.
All right, now we can grab the pressure plate and mount it up.
All right, one more thing to do.
What's up?
Yep.
Pull it.
Yep. Pop goes the weasel.
There's a short bit of information that I didn't mention that I should have, that we might want to throw this bit. Before we actually installed it, depending on the year of your Mustang, the bolts are different. The torque specifications are going to be different because the bolts are going to be different. I believe it's 04 and older are going to have different specs or torque specifications than 04 and older, or 05 and newer, my apologies. So 05 and newer have a different one, and 04 and older. Just check that, be aware. Double check your torque specifications always. We double, triple check every torque we do. You don't want something risk breaking or you bending something. Just double check torque specifications for your year specifically. Don't take us as the word of God. So just do your own research for your own car. Beautiful.
Well, folks, that's clutch install. Yay.
We did it.
Flywheel. Resurface. I'm just proud that we remembered to put this aggravating, plate in here first.